So ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for coming out to what will be the final question and answer session regarding Navarre Incorporation. I appreciate all the citizens who chose to come out this evening. I know you guys had other options, and it's good to know that so many people are interested in what we're talking about this evening. Before we introduce the panel, I'd like to start off by reminding everybody that there is a hurricane out there. You know, I posted earlier this evening that we often joke in the Panhandle about the magnet that was off of Navarre Beach, you know, for the last 20 years. You know, the one that drew Aaron here, and Opal, and Ivan, and Dennis. And, you know, I know we joke and say, thank God somebody moved the magnet away from Navarre Beach, but of course we all know that when there's a hurricane in the Gulf and it misses us, we know that somebody somewhere is getting hit. So please keep those citizens in Florida in your prayers this evening. You know, Tampa, Sarasota, St. Pete, Bradenton. Let's remember those Floridians in our thoughts and prayers this evening as we leave here this evening. Before we go any further, I'd like to turn things over to Father John Kelly here at St. Sylvester's Church, who, Father, hopefully you'll be willing to lead us in a prayer this evening.
Let us pray. Almighty and merciful God, as we gather here this evening, we ask you to bless our beautiful community of Navarre and Navarre Beach, and all of our families and all those gathered here this evening. We ask you to give us a spirit of honesty and respect and civility as we discuss these issues that are before us. Most importantly, we pray for those who have suffered from Hurricane Helene and those who are now suffering from Hurricane Milton down south, that God may protect them and their families and help these communities to find healing at this time. And so we offer you all these prayers in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Father John. And I'm now looking for Mr. Jack Russell, if you'd be willing to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Everybody all right? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Jack. I'd like to take a moment just to introduce our esteemed panel for this evening. This is our third and final panel, and we actually have some repeat performers up here this evening. Let's start over here at this end. We are delighted to have the mayor of the city of Destin. He's back for a repeat performance. He did so well on the first panel that he was the star of the show. I said, we gotta have him back. So everybody, please welcome Bobby Wagner. Next to Bobby, we have Bernie Oder, council member from the city of Mary Esther, who came all the way from Mary Esther. I called the Florida League of Cities. I said, I need someone who can answer the tough questions. They said, we're sending you Bernie. So everybody, welcome Bernie Oder. And then, of course, there's Father John Kelly here of St. Sylvester Church, who has actually gone out of his way to encourage me as I ran for state office, and he's encouraged the incorporation movement, just a leading advocate for the community here in Navarre. Father John, thank you for everything you do. Next to him, we have Wes Seiler. Wes is the constituent who actually brought the idea of Navarre Incorporation forward to me, I think almost just as soon as I was elected. So, Wes, take a bow and thank you for everything you've done. And last but not least, we have Jim Taylor from Navarre Beach. Jim, you know, we've been hearing some rumblings about Navarre Beach. There's some rumors going around out there about whether Navarre Beach is interested in this or not, and of, you know, whether it's in the beach's best interest. Hopefully you'll set some of those rumors straight, because I think we either hang together or we hang separately. So hopefully you can speak to that. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Taylor. So this is going to be kind of a loose format. For those of you that haven't participated before, there's just going to be a series of questions. I'll start by asking the most obvious questions, but we actually have members of the audience right now who are writing down any questions they might have specifically for you. So why don't we start? I see a lot of new faces here this evening. People who maybe they thought they were walking into like a mud wrestling match, or maybe they thought there was going to be a steel cage match here tonight of people yelling at each other. There's going to be none of that this evening. This is going to be an informational session. So why don't we start, Wes, with you first and foremost. Why don't you spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes telling the citizens where this process came from, what was the incentive behind this process, and who has been involved in this process?
Thanks, Dr. Rubman. I really appreciate it, and really appreciate what he's done as the state representative, because he's right. I brought this to his attention when he first came out, and I was so excited to have the first state rep from Navarre in our history, and he has shown us what that looks like for someone to be from this community and to be in a leadership position and stand up and speak for us. And so I knew with someone like that, this was the right person to have this discussion. And he's right, it's my fault that we're here in a sense, but this wasn't my invention. This wasn't an idea that I personally came up with. This has been a discussion and a debate in Navarre's history that goes back decades. There have been many efforts that have looked at this issue, and I am so excited that we're at a point where people have the opportunity to vote on it. If you don't know, there has been a vote on it before. It was 10 years ago, and at that point, 44% voted in favor and 56% were against. So it was pretty close, but it was enough for people to say, okay, it's not the majority, let's let it go. So a lot has changed since then. And I got involved in this effort because I moved here about 8 years ago, and I started learning about how things work or don't work in Navarre, and I started asking questions, and they always led back to the county. And I made multiple trips, and friends Chuck Pullman and Nancy Forrester, many others can tell you that we spent a lot of time listening and learning about how things happen and how decisions are made. And at one point, I'm sitting there looking, and I'm watching 5 people decide this, knowing that always there will be 4 who are not from Navarre making decisions. And then I watched as many of those decisions went against what the people of Navarre would want. And so that's what's led us to this point, is we said, what would it look like for a city to exist in Navarre? And there's a wide range, as these gentlemen can tell you, especially the ones who have worked in cities or are currently working in them, they can tell you how different each city is. And so we established a nonprofit. We wanted to serve the community, and we wanted the type of objectivity and clarity and factual information that panels like this afford us to be able to have this discussion. And we've been doing events, Father Kelly knows, in this building for a couple years now, of trying to get the facts out, trying to bring experts in, trying to get educated. It's not like I know everything or anybody in our group knows everything, but we try to collect all the information we can. And what we found is that a city can work for the people if it's set up the right way and held accountable. And so all of that can happen, but at the end of the day, it's not what I say or anybody on this panel or even what Joel Rubman says, it's what the people say. That's the most important part. And so now we're at a point where that vote is coming this Saturday, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you, Wes. And by the way, that is the hook. When I start walking towards you, that's the hook. We're going to try and keep this. We're going to try and keep this Q&A on schedule. The last Q&A was during a hurricane, actually just like tonight, and people said they were there for an hour and a half, and I think we only answered like 4 questions. So we're going to try and keep it moving. But thank you for dispelling. You've already mentioned myth number 1. So one of the things that I get told on social media, for those of you that don't follow me, you should, Dr. Joel Rubman for Florida House on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But one of the comments that I get from people who don't necessarily agree with incorporation, they say, oh, this comes up every year. Myth number 1, it does not come up every year. It's only actually come up once before, and it's gotten to this actual stage, and that was back in 2014. The state representative at that time asked for what I asked for, a non-binding referendum. The county commissioners allowed it on behalf of a representative who did not live here. I went to the county commission on at least 2 separate occasions to petition for that same right, and as a resident of Navarre and a state representative, my request was denied twice. So right there, I think that makes an argument that you can understand why people might want to have the voices of Navarre heard. In the case of your highest ranking official from Navarre, my voice was not heard in Milton. And Jim, I'm going to ask you a question. I know I said this is kind of an open forum, but there's certain questions I have of each individual. And I see that your placard says Navarre Beach. We're hearing different things. Again, this is probably myth number 2, that the beach wants no part of this. Can you talk to us about the feelings of the residents of Navarre Beach? I mean, you heard Wes talk about local government, the government closest to the people. How does Navarre Beach feel when your nearest representation is 45 minutes away up Highway 87?
Again, I'm Jim Taylor. I've lived on the beach for 21 years now. And my wife and I have been involved in real estate all that time and very close to the beach. As far as the leaseholders, we only hear one side each meeting once a month, and that is from Navarre Beach Incorporation, just the beach. We really don't hear anything from this side. I'm very much in favor of this moving forward and us becoming incorporated. As far as the beach goes, I sat down at a luncheon yesterday, a volunteer luncheon at Andy D's, and sat across from about 6 or 7 ladies, and all of a sudden it came up. And a lady across from me said, "Nope, don't want it." Next lady said, "Why?" She said, "Another layer of government. Don't want another layer of government. Just don't want it." So I got a chance to talk to the ladies for a while, and I think I swung a few of them over to our side once they saw what was really going on. One quick example, I was president of leaseholders back in 2006 after Ivan and Dennis, and White Sands Boulevard was a mess. We went to the county and said, "Can you fix our road?" They said, "Once we get the water system in place, we'll take care of your road." Well, they did. 17 years later, 2023, we got our road fixed. So the people on the beach, I'm not sure which way they're going. I think they're like a lot of people, they're hesitant to change. They're kind of set in what they have now, not realizing they have something better. So again, my opinion, and the opinion of the beach, I can't put a finger on it, honestly.
Thank you. I appreciate that perspective. And the other thing that I'm hearing, just as the state representative, people are asking, well, where do you get the money from? What's going to happen when Navarre incorporates? And of course, I know people aren't used to this, but as a politician, you have to be honest with people. Of course, your taxes are going to go up. But the argument I'm hearing, the people who don't know better, they scare people into saying, well, this is going to go up, that's going to go up, your taxes are going to be thousands of dollars. I've done the math based on the millage rate. My personal taxes will go up $270 a year, which, to be honest, folks, when I have a grievance and I have to drive all the way up to Milton at 8 a.m. to be heard, and even then, sometimes you're not even heard, I would gladly pay $270 a year to have local representation. We actually have 2 people here representing cities here on my right. Would either one of you gentlemen care to talk about local voices and how important that is?
Yes. Again, my background, I'm an ex-military guy, Air Force, 23 years. Well, during that time, I was working with the Air Force and went into Bosnia and Herzegovina, and there was a Army colonel who was on the aircraft. Make it a long story short, he turned out to be Pat Manning, which is now the state representative for Okaloosa in that area. So it's a small world. Well, when the city, went down there to lobby to help get some funds, it was a lot nicer to walk in and see Pat and ask about his wife and the kids and the grandkids. Well, guess what? We got $1.5 million out of the state. So it's nice to have those relationships and build those relationships. And also then, one hand washes the other. He was working on the Baker Act. It hadn't been updated in 50 years. Well, I'm also with the Northwest Florida Leagues of Cities. We cover 17 counties. Well, we were able to get all the cities in the area to sign a letter and send it to him, which helped him get it upgraded. So again, one hand washes the other. And again, local voices. I'll give you an example today. 3 people stopped me at Starbucks this morning when I was getting my coffee. 2 more stopped me at Publix when I was in there getting groceries. Another one stopped me as I was out for my evening walk. So again, local government, they see me, they know me, they see me at church, they see me at the Starbucks. Again, good luck going clear to Tallahassee or Crestview to find a county commissioner who, again, they're worried about the whole county. I worry about my 2.5 miles by 1 mile. Perfect.
Bobby, I'm gonna set you up a little bit, Bobby. I'm gonna. So, Bernie, you mentioned things like appropriations and how important it is to have those relationships to get funding from the state. That's a part of the equation we've been talking about in these Q&As, because I don't think people realize how fortunate they are to have a representative from this area. So you can imagine everyone brings me their Christmas wish list of what they want in terms of special projects and special funding. How likely do you think it would be if someone brought me a list of 10 items for Navarre, that at least 1 or 2 of those would get funded by the state government? Yeah. So and guys, just as a matter of reference, that is my job in Tallahassee. I entertain mayors like Bobby, the mayor of Milton, the mayor of Jay, the mayor of Crestview. They all come by with a Christmas wish list for special projects in their cities. Now, these elected officials are doing nothing wrong. That's their job, to file for appropriations and to ask for state funding, because we're going to spend that money somewhere. Unfortunately, a lot of that money currently goes to places like Orlando and Miami. We'd like to spend some of that money up here in Northwest Florida. So when I do entertain the mayor of Jay, there's a wish list of a few items. When I entertain the mayor of Milton, there's a wish list of 10 items. There is no wish list for Navarre. There is no local representation to come with a list of 10 items. Say, can you at least get 1 or 2 of these? Maybe a pedestrian overpass over 98. Maybe some sidewalks in Holly by the Sea. There is no one to petition for that on behalf of Navarre. And again, I'll just give some numbers, and then Bobby, I want you to kind of chime in on that, dovetail on what I'm saying. For example, my first session, my appropriations, if you look back at my appropriations from 2023, I was able to garner $2 million in state funds for the city of Milton. Now, that doesn't include the county. That doesn't include the rural areas. That's just to be spent in the city of Milton, predominantly around their Riverwalk. Now, I was able to get some appropriations for Navarre. Navarre's fire chief came up to Tallahassee and asked for a fire rescue vehicle. There were also, I believe, some highway improvements that needed to be done in Navarre. But compare the $2 million I got for Milton, exclusively to be used in Milton. That same year, I was only able to get about $400,000 for Navarre. And that was 100% of the appropriations that they asked me to get. So in other words, I fully funded Navarre, but they only asked for $400,000 worth of improvements. So Bobby, maybe you can pick up from there and explain to the people here about the difference between, say, for example, being unincorporated in Okaloosa County, like Destin used to be, and now the current face of Destin. And maybe you can also tell the voters, because there are people out there spreading misinformation that if you live in the Destin city limits, your property taxes must be $20,000 a year. Can you shed some light on the truth of that?
Hello, everyone. My name is Bobby Wagner. I've been in government for 3 years. Mary has 2, and I am supposed to be a band director. So there's my background in all of this. So with that, what I have learned, and I've just been a steward of learning and trying to get money back down to Destin, selfishly, since that's who I represent. And so some of the things that I've learned that cities can do, and what Destin has done very well now that we are incorporated, is we are one of the lowest millage rates in the state of Florida at 1.615, and it trickles off. But really what that means is for every 100,000, you're paying $165. So that means I pay a little under $400 a year right now. And we are one of the most conservative and most budget-conscious cities, and again, maybe a little biased here, but why I believe that's true and why the numbers I believe are there to back me up is for every dollar that we ask the citizens to pay for us, we go and find $5, whether that's from the county, whether that's from a regional council or a TPO, and there's a bunch of alphabet soup, whether that's from appropriations. So that is one of the most powerful tools that a city has without getting into the weeds of all these different groups that we can go after and all these opportunities that open up when you are a city. At the end of the day, if your city is working correctly and you have good representation and people who are willing to get out there, just like a chamber of commerce, if you have a small business, a chamber only works as good as how much effort and knowledge and network you're putting into it. And if you have representatives that are working this hard to be incorporated, if those same people are on, even the ones that are not wanting to incorporate, if those people are working this hard for this topic, if you put that effort into what a city is supposed to do and the vehicles and the tools that are out there, you guys could be at 1 to 7, 1 to 6, as far as the dollar in versus the dollars that are accessible for that city for improvements. It's incredible. And I think maybe one of the issues that the county doesn't like that you guys are trying to do this is we have 2 CRA districts, community redevelopment areas. And what that means is for every dollar of improvement in those areas, the county has to back it and match us. So we get, I think, a little over $1 million a year from the county just in these redevelopment areas. Not only are they redeveloping, but they're redeveloping in the way that we want it because we wrote the land development code. We wrote how these things are going to go out. We tell you how many parking spaces you need, how much green space you need, and how much density that you are allowed to have. So it's really a win-win when it comes to charting your own path. Yes, it costs money, but that money can, if well done, be quadrupled fold over and over again. And that's kind of what I've learned in 3 years in government. Again, I'm not trying to be a politician. I'm not trying to climb a ladder. But from a just boots on the ground education, a government that works for you is the closest to home. And if those people are working not just in your home, they're out there finding dollars across the state and across all these different partnerships. And that's kind of something I had no idea trying to be a band director in college. Yeah.
So, Bobby, thank you for that perspective, because if I understand you properly, and I'm pretty sure I do, my $270, which, may be a lot to some people. If you live on a fixed income or you're disabled or retired, a tax increase of $200, $270, or if you live in a smaller house, $150, it might be substantial. But if you want those street lights, if you want more say in whether there's a fifth Dollar General, your $150 allows the city of Navarre to maybe get another $10,000. Yeah, so I appreciate that perspective. And Wes, before I hand it back over to you, Father Kelly, I want to bring you in on the conversation because you're looking a little tired there this evening. You have something you want to say, I think. So guys, Father Kelly is my priest, right? This is my parish here. I am a diehard Catholic, and I think my voting record shows that. Father Kelly, I'm going to say a couple things that maybe you're not allowed to say. Vote no on Amendment 3. Vote no, please. Please vote no on Amendment 4. Now, having said that, Father Kelly, give us your thoughts on incorporation because, you really don't have a dog in the fight. I mean, you're just a normal citizen. You're not running for office. You're not doing anything. When you heard about incorporation, what were your thoughts and what do you perceive the advantages to be?
I'm not climbing the ladder. I'm not even on the ladder.
Fair enough.
So anyway, I'm just happy to welcome everyone here. Our parish welcomes all kinds of civic groups and organizations, all charitable organizations, and I think Preserve Navarre is a very worthy organization. I don't know which side of the fence you're on. That doesn't matter to me. What really concerned me, quite honestly, is when I heard that there were among us people that were trying to prevent a vote. And I said, that doesn't make sense. We're Americans, right? We're not from Russia or Venezuela. We vote. We can speak our mind. And that's the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. The church has no official position. I, as pastor, have no official position. The Catholic community has no official position. As a private citizen, and I'm a citizen, we can't be citizens, we're not a city. As a resident of Navarre and Navarre Beach, and I've been here 21 years, and before that, back in '87, I was in Gulf Breeze at St. Anne's. So I've seen the growth and development of this area, and our community of faith has also grown with it. So yeah, I think I would love to see Navarre become a city. It will become a city eventually. It's inevitable. I mean, Fort Walton Beach is a city, right? Milton is a city. Jay is a city. I was a pastor in Bonifay and Chipley. Both those were cities, much smaller than Navarre. So, but this is a beautiful community. Whether we incorporate or not is up to the people, up to the vote. But I think it's very important that we have the opportunity to vote. That's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Father. That's very uncomfortable. I've never given the priest the hook before, so that's. Thank you for letting me walk towards you here on the dais. But Wes, I know you and Jim are just kind of chomping at the bit to follow up on Father's words there about the right to vote. Father, I also think you're the company you keep, and so when I have constituents come to me, understand that Preserve Navarre, the gentleman sitting to your right, by state statute, he's already met all the requirements for incorporation. If I were a tyrant, if I didn't care what the constituents thought, I could have already run the bill and incorporated Navarre. But that's not how America works. As you said, we vote. And so I'm not moving forward until I'm absolutely certain that the people in this community are with us. If they vote no on Saturday, this issue is dead for the remainder of my tenure in the legislature. And so, Father, look at it that way, that I gave this gentleman to your right, I gave him one extra requirement that's not even required by statute. You know who required it? I required it. I just made it up. I said, you have to show me proof of majority support. Now, after all the hurdles his group has already jumped through, they paid for a feasibility study, they've got a charter, they've done all this hard work. When I told Wes's group that, hey, you've got one more hurdle, he could have gone to the newspapers, he could have said, this is unfair. He could have probably gone to some attorneys and said, hey, this isn't right, this isn't required by law. But you know what they did? They rolled up their sleeves and they got to work. And I think that speaks volumes about this group and about their intentions, that, by all rights, they should be the people who are the maddest at me. Instead, it's the other group, for simply wanting a vote, it's the other group that's mad at me. And I think that's pretty telling. So Wes, can you and Jim, y'all can trade the mic back and forth, talk about the importance of having a say in what happens to the future of Navarre?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? The entire point of having the vote is you should get to decide this issue, and that's why it's something I'm happy to do. We should always be willing to support that because the people are the ones making the decision. So unlike petition requirements or things like that where there was no law for it, when he said, well, I want to vote, of course, that's what I want. And I'd be happy to do petitions if that leads to a vote. And that's something that we had talked to the county about doing. But of course, they wouldn't give us a path to do that. And so that's why we've hired a company to facilitate what's going to happen on Saturday. But what makes me excited about this and the sense of urgency that I feel comes back to cost. We've talked about that. We've talked about the addition that you could pay, but I'm concerned about what we're paying today. That's what gets me fired up. So I'm on the board for my HOA. It's a single street of 20 homes, and we met this past January, really sweet people. We get together, we say, look, our street is flooding every time it rains. What can we do to mitigate the stormwater? And of course, as an HOA, our options are limited, and we get back to, well, we got to raise dues. We got to charge people more. And now we're paying $500 every year for a HOA to try to get after a project because it doesn't have exactly what Bobby was just talking about, the ability to multiply your money. And then I look at the county, and now they're looking at raising taxes potentially with the local option sales tax doubling, and I'm looking at the $200 million they already have access to. Where is that money being spent? So for me and my family, we are very sensitive to the cost. We live in it like so many of you, and we're watching each year, we're already paying more. And I don't feel like, number one, that I have a say in it when I go up to the county and talk to 5 gentlemen now who don't live from Navarre, or when I'm in an HOA and I do have a say, but I don't have options. I don't have the ability to go utilize so much of the money that I'm already paying. So for me, I look at, can I afford not to incorporate, given the fact that rates on everything are going up year after year, and I don't see anybody short of this man fighting for that money to be spent here.
I attended the meeting, County Commissioners meeting, where about 75 people showed up in support of our effort. We listened to commissioners. They sort of listened to us. We were very, very strong in numbers. And we had 2 commissioners sitting up there who both in their districts have cities, Milton and Gulf Breeze. They were the first 2 to vote against us getting on the ballot. So where's our representation? We need representation. If we can't get it from them, where are we going to get it? And once again, about the layer of government, level of government, this will be our level of government. We don't have a level as far as I'm concerned right now. We lose on almost everything we take up there. It's a 3-2 or 4-1, and we're losing. We need to have our own level of government.
So very good, you guys. Now, we're about halfway through the program, so I want to switch gears a little bit. Now, this is going to be the open forum that you guys thought you were signing up for, right? We've got questions here from the audience. And Father Kelly, you'll be delighted. We actually have a very respectful audience who's here to learn. I'm not having to filter any of these questions. So you have some great people here this evening. We're going to try and read each and every one of these. Let's start with this one. And again, it's an open mic. Whoever wants to just raise your hand and I'll walk towards you. Would Incorporation do anything to allow Navarre to keep more of the funds that the county receives from tourist dollars? So we're specifically talking about tourist dollars. Who wants to answer that?
I'll speak from what I've learned.
Is Destin a tourist town? I don't know anybody that goes there. Are you sure?
While I definitely don't want you guys to be Destin, I know you're not Destin. We are already brothers, sister, cousins, whatever family member you want. We have Highway 98. We're a small coastal town with big city issues when the tourist seasons are here. One of the things that we just covenant in, and one of the issues that we had, is that the TDC was taking what we generate from the south and disputing it wherever they wanted to, wherever they felt fit, because the same reason we only have 1 seat in Destin, and that even goes Niceville, Blue Water, Destin is our rep seat. And so now we get 12.5% off the top, and then we start splitting up everything. And so just from that alone, not only that, but the projects you guys have, or whatever the TDC wants to do in your area, I know there's like a boardwalk or something up for discussion. If you guys want to change it, guess who gets to stop that? The city. At the end of the day, you want to work with them, and you don't want to spend dollars and waste time trying to just go back and forth. But at the end of the day, we bought beachfront back because of the private issues that we have in Destin. We've gone too far and allowed too many people to overdevelop, and whether it's single-family homes or multi-density homes. But now through the TDC and these new rules that we laid out, we're now buying back our beachfront for our locals to have a seat, as well as our tourism to have a place to go in the sand. But not only that, we're in an issue right now where they wanted to make it a giant parking lot and try to maximize the car capacity. And we're like, no. Yes, we want the cars, which are the tourism, but we also recognize that there's locals that live in these communities, and we want facilities. We want the things that make going to the beach enjoyable. So we've unfortunately held it up a year because we said, no, do better. Make your engineers do better. Make this a quality of life construction, not a capacity maximization project. And so while you still need to work with the county, you have now money and a slice of the pie there, and you get to have a slice of what the engineering finals will look like, because you can tell them, no, this is our city. It's us money, but this is our land that we are partnering in. So that's something that we're dealing with right now, Tarpon Beach and Shores of Crystal Beach. If you look it up, that's where we're at right now, is Tarpon Beach.
Thank you, Bobby. I think that pretty much answered that. And again, that's why I brought you here this evening. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we have some answers.
Wes, I think this one's yours, and it's written on my Trump National Doral Miami letterhead here. So that's who I'm voting for in November. Will we have our own police force, or will the county sheriff do it? I think that's a pretty straightforward question. 30 seconds or less.
All right, I'll try to keep it short. We did a survey a couple years ago, and we mailed every home in Navarre asking, what do you want from your city? Because, again, the people's voice matters, and people prioritized what they wanted the city to do, and they also said these are things that we don't want to change. And one of those was law enforcement, because it was just overwhelmingly positive, the job that Sheriff Johnson has done, the fact that he has an office here that looks after Navarre. And so we said, okay, we need to be responsive to that. And so we had a meeting right here, and he spoke and he said, my office will be happy to organize a contract so those city services don't change what you currently have, and maybe just improve it a little bit more, but it would still be him, and we focus on the things that people want, infrastructure, tourism, and all that.
Destin does the same thing.
Does it? Okay.
So Destin also contracts with the sheriff?
Yeah, pensions are expensive. Pensions are expensive. Let the county have it.
There you go. This is going to be just some rapid fire questions, maybe 2 or 3 sentence answers. Anybody want to tackle it? I can't tackle it. I'm a politician. Why isn't Navarre getting money from the county? Where's the money going? Anybody want that? Nobody wants that. I think that's probably the big question.
Yeah, I mean, so my intention and everything that I've said is not to demonize the county. They're actually doing the job that they are set up to do. So they have the entire county, and if you haven't driven the county, drive all the way up to Jay. I mean, it'll take you an hour, right, to get up to the northern part of the county. They have a wide area to cover, and so they are distributing the funds towards projects that can actually get done, which turns out are typically led by cities. So they're doing what they can do and what's executable based upon the way things are laid out. And so people think just changing out a commissioner is going to fix it. Government is not focused when it's that big. And so you need the representation, as Jim talked about, to focus that government, say, we're going to take that money and spend it here.
I'm going to walk down towards this end of the table. Again, rapid fire. How are city governments more powerful than a Navarre County Commissioner? Are there things that city government can do that maybe your county commissioner wouldn't be able to do for Navarre? City versus county.
It's quite simple, really. The Tourist Development Council he was talking about, when it was first established, it was for Fort Walton Beach and Destin, where there's a lot more cities in Okaloosa County. We, Mary Esther, have 2 hotels, and we're about to have 2 more built. So we went back to the TDC, which TDC kept telling us to go to the county commissioners. Well, we went to the county commissioners, and then we also brought Niceville, Crestview, Shalimar, and all that. Well, guess what? They had to redo it. Now every year we get a portion of the pie. And when tourism goes up, we get more money. The other thing we did, we have 3 water towers in Mary Esther. Well, all the cell phone companies want to buy and rent the top of the cell towers. Guess what? We get a couple $100,000 a year from Verizon, AT&T, and all. So again, there's ways to get money to come in. Department of Defense, as we all know, 80–90% of all Okaloosa County comes out of the Department of Defense. Well, guess what we also get from that? Department of Defense. So yes, we've got the Lockheeds, the Boeings, the General Dynamics and stuff. So there's a ways to do this without having you pay the extra money. So yeah, you work with the county on that.
Wes, this is a Wes question, but again, I'm going to hold you to a time limit because we got to keep it moving. The Preserve Navarre Feasibility Study 2024 lists 7 goals. Can you please pick maybe 2 of them? Or maybe 3 if you can be quick. What of those 7 goals are your top 2 or 3, and how would Incorporation address those goals?
Yeah, so we've talked about it quite a bit, but home rule is the goal. Home rule, your decisions made by locals. The ability to know that the person who's going to make that decision is a neighbor, is somebody who's lived with it, and they have to live with the decision that they've made. Right? They have to live in it. It's not someone who can make a decision and then just say, well, that's a Navarre problem, let it roll downhill, and we'll see if it makes them mad, which is a lot of times how decisions are made. That's 1. And then 2 is allocating your money here. The ability, as we've talked about constantly, to bring the money that you pay and that tourists bring and to ensure that that is spent on local projects. It doesn't mean everybody's going to get everything they want immediately, but it does mean that list is going to be Navarre projects that we get to speak into, and it allows us to hold government accountable for.
So if you want to hold the mic
Yeah.
and repeat the question, I'll say it, you can repeat it into the mic. Someone asked, who's paying for the city charter and the feasibility study?
Yeah, it's us. So that was part of the group. Is when we first set up Preserve Navarre, the question was, it takes money to set up a group. It takes money to do this process. Where's that's going to come from? I am on my third energy drink because I have a full-time job and a family and don't get paid for this. And so we are all just donating our time. And our money source comes from people like you. It comes from locals who pay $90 a year, and then we use that money to be able to put out material that we make in our off time. And so it is a grassroots group, and the reason we did it that way was to keep it pure. We did not want any one entity to be able to come in and direct our group and tell us we have to do this or we have to do that. And through that, we have developed a sense of community with Preserve Navarre, and Father Kelly knows this well because he's seen these people come through, of everyone getting treated with respect and everyone having an equal voice in our group. So that money is a shoestring budget, Doc. As you know, we put it together based on what we can come up with as a community.
We also have a question or two, following up on that. We're getting a couple questions about feasibility studies. And again, this is kind of that rabbit hole that the anti-people have thrown out there. Everyone thinks they're an expert on feasibility studies. Look, I've read the 130 pages. I'm no expert. Thankfully, we have people who are currently reviewing your feasibility study in the Florida legislative offices right now in the Capitol. You're welcome to go visit them. I just got off the phone with them this afternoon, the policy chief for local affairs and local government. As of 4:30 this afternoon Eastern time, I called him and said, any problems with the feasibility study that's been submitted? None yet, but I'll let you know. I said, nothing fatal, nothing terminally flawed? Nope. If there were, you'd get a phone call. So again, things are progressing there. But again, Wes, if you want to speak to the feasibility study, because the way I explain it to my constituents, it's like a business plan. If any of you have ever run a small business and you need a small business loan, no bank's just going to give you money. You got to list a plan of what you're going to do and how you're going to accomplish it. So I know my business plan for Holly Navarre Medical Clinic looks nothing like my practice in reality, because obviously you try to apply some of these things to the real world, it doesn't work, you make modifications, you're smart, you're creative, you're inventive. So I think there's a lot of people getting hung up on this feasibility study, when the fact of the matter is, folks, if Wes says something you don't like, if any member of Preserve Navarre says something you don't like, after you incorporate, the next vote is for your city council members. So all you have to do is vote for the city council member whose platform says, I'm not going to do what he says. I'm not going to do what that guy says. I'm going to do this. So did I explain that well enough? Would you like to follow up on that, about the feasibility, how that's really fluid? You're not voting on a feasibility study. You're voting on the premise of whether you want a local voice or not. Feasibility studies come and go. What's in those studies come and go. You, the voters, get to decide what Navarre looks like, not some feasibility study.
Yeah, the feasibility study was built out of meetings like this, and I loved it because it triggered those conversations. There are some groups that have just hired a company to tell them what's feasible from Navarre, right? But they can't, no expert can tell you what you want, right, better than yourself. So we started with the people of Navarre having meetings right here, listening to what they wanted out of their city. And that changes over time, right? And so we made sure we were sensitive to that, and we're continuing to be sensitive to that. So you see something in it, let me know. But you might find one of your neighbors, right, feels differently, and that cues up the discussion. And then the criticism came, well, this is great that it's grassroots, but is it professional? And so we said, okay, we will hire an expert to review it and give us feedback. And that's why, having panels like this with the experience that you see is educational for me, right? They're teaching me, okay, how does Bobby do that for Destin, right? How is he getting so much money from the county, state, and federal government for Destin? Oh, they figured out that CRAs are a useful tool. Can we add that into ours? It's a learning process. The Constitution of our country wasn't built overnight, right? It took time for the founding fathers to learn and build something with intention that works, right? And that's what we're trying to do in a sense here for Navarre, is to build a plan of action that, while complicated and sophisticated, works for you like that does or should for our country, right? So for us, it's always about trying to mix in whatever expertise we need to stay factual with listening to the people of Navarre, because that's the footing that we want to set the city on as it gets set up.
And again, this question is to the panel. Is it true that home and business insurance costs go down when there are city fire and police departments versus county? Now, again, I don't know if that would be applied to Navarre, because we have, right under the current situation, there's no city fire department that's being proposed, correct? There's no city police department.
I can speak to it. So we had those panels with like Sheriff Johnson. We had it with the superintendent for schools. And each time we looked at that fire departments, we looked at what are the cities doing. And even when they contract, and Bobby can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but even when you contract, you still work into that contract the ability to provide feedback, right? Right. And so even doing that, we looked at the school systems. What services are the cities providing for the school system, even though it's county-wide? And what we found is there are still programs and things like that that the cities are doing to help those services. So even there, even when you're contracting, it's still giving you more of a voice, right? And in doing so, you're able, hopefully, to start driving down some of these other costs that you feel or experience in terms of insurance and everything that you talked about. So you want to talk to that, Bobby?
Yeah, I'll just lead on that. The city of Destin is like a glorified HOA. We don't have fire, we don't have EMS, everything's subcontracted out, but what we do have is a public works director who is FEMA certified. So between FEMA and our action plans and just our range of coverage, all that come together. This is one of my least knowledgeable topics, but I say all that to say, through checking boxes, we make all those national and state regulations happen to give us the lowest deductibles and lowest fees possible individually.
So, Bobby, I'm going to let you keep the mic on this end. This is going to be the Bobby and Bernie show for the next 5 minutes. I told you, you're getting the hard questions, Bernie.
Yeah, I was waiting for a negative.
Can y'all explain, Mary Esther and Destin, when there's a conflict, like let's say there's something you disagree on with the county, maybe another Dollar General or something, what authority does a city have to disagree with the county? In other words, where do you get to overrule the county?
So to my knowledge, if we're saying like a Dollar General, the county has no authority over what is being built inside the city limits. And that's something that we're struggling with, and a quarter of Destin is unincorporated, and in 2 years I'm hoping to have a referendum vote on incorporating, and I think it's going to pass 60% plus, just like an amendment at the state level, because of things like this. At our meeting last Monday, we just turned down the ability for billboards to continue to not have billboards in Destin. They tried to come back up to us, and we said no. People are wanting to build these like quick hotels that I drove past several car washes that you guys have. Guess what? Destin is putting a limit and capacity to what all these things that are clearly just land speculation and not community-oriented businesses. I'm all for small business and capitalism, but at the end of the day, we are overruling the county's ability to build when you're a city.
So it sounds like zoning, you basically have
Probably one of the
biggest things.
benefits of being a city.
Anything else offhand that you can, what about maybe speed limits within your area? Anything at all, neighborhoods?
Yeah, we just lowered our speed limits by 5. If you want speed bumps or speed calming measures, designing roads differently, all these things happen at that local level, and we take it road by road. I mean, we have a whole application where we have a committee of public safety committee. If someone thinks that their road is too dangerous, they come to the committee, they validate it, we go do a speed study. I'll skip all the little factuals, but at the end of the day, if it passes the study, guess what? We'll put in some kind of speed measurements, whether it's bollards, speed humps, any of that kind of stuff.
The other one we're facing is the FDOT, or Department of Transportation, wants to widen Highway 98 and make it 6 lanes wide. Well, the problem we have with that is we have some what they call lift stations and things like that, and they said you're going to have to move those. Well, wait a minute, who's going to pay for that? And they said, no, you are. And I said, no, we're not. And we're fighting with the state and the county, because now we're talking about they're going to go around the mound in Fort Walton Beach and possibly come down Hollywood, which there's plenty of room there, and there's a lot more road there that they can widen. Hurlburt's loving that because that puts another gate off of 98. Okay, so yeah, there are ways we can get around this. Same way the other one with the school zones. Yep. Mary Esther Elementary is right on 98. Well, the state got very intelligent and allowing now the municipalities to put up cameras. And every car that goes 10 miles over the speed limit during school time is going to be a $100 fine.
Good to know.
Guess what? We're going to get some of that $100. So yeah, it helps besides saving a child from getting killed, but we're going to make some money off of it. So will the counties, but that's all right. It slows cars down, and we're a lot safer. And again, also the sheriff loves it because now they can use it where they're looking for the Amber Alert, a silver Honda with license, blah, 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 blah. They got these cameras. Ooh, we can see it now. It'll make their job a lot faster in finding things.
Just to add to the camera thing, we were 0-7 in Destin. We were like, ooh, we don't really want that kind of government. So again, every city's different. We were like, heck no, we don't want cameras shooting us like that. Yeah.
Well, and Bernie, you mentioned Highway 98. Another thing that the city brings that a county wouldn't necessarily. So I've been involved in talks with Eglin and Hurlburt to fix the 98 congestion problem as people leave Navarre and come back home to Navarre. Now, this is a problem that is exclusive to Navarre, but I've been involved in roundtables on base. I believe you've been there. I know Bobby's been there. I mean, there's representation from literally everyone in the Tri-County area. Guess which area does not have representation? The very community that's most affected by highway. Navarre has no one at the table. So when they decide what the future of 98 is going to look like, when they're going to decide how you folks get to Hurlburt and back, your community will have zero say in it. I'm the only person there from Navarre, and I'm at the state level. I'm not a local politician as much as people think I should be. I did not run for local office. We need a local voice. That's embarrassing, by the way. When the 3-star general stands up and says, "I'd like to thank the mayor of Destin, the mayor of Mary Esther, the mayor of Navarre for coming," I have to interrupt him and say, "Sir, there is no mayor of Navarre." So again, just think about that. Important decisions are being made that affect you on a uniquely personal level that you have absolutely zero say in. This might be another Bernie question, or maybe a Wes question, maybe a Bobby question. You only mention millage rates when you talk about taxation. Now, my understanding is this is a question from someone who's living on a fixed income, where $200 may be a lot. $300 may be the difference between living here and not living here. I would venture to say for that person, you probably want to vote no. Because again, these are tough decisions to make. But they're actually curious about what are the additional line items that would be added. What does it do to their utilities, their trash? Are there going to be city taxes levied on those things as well?
Yeah, I mean, Bobby and Bernie have talked to this, but if you take a survey of what is currently happening in your area, what revenue is being generated, you start to see the money that's available, and then you look at where is that money being spent, right? And then you say, if a city exists, how would it redirect those funds to better use? So I'll give you an example. I talked about our HOA. You've got plenty of other utilities, franchise fees that are currently being spent. Lost is another one, your sales tax, your fuels tax. The city, as a municipality, can do things that an HOA can't do, which is get access to that revenue. And it gets it by virtue of being a municipality and by being set up correctly to do that. Once it does that, you were talking about a transfer of those fees to local control. And so I hear the another layer of government talk a lot. And what that doesn't take into account is the transfer of revenue to the city. Because at that point, it is refocusing government towards what it's supposed to be. Now, I wish you could do it with zero property taxes. I really do. But everything that I've seen says you have to have at least some skin in the game to be able to get access to that revenue. But as soon as that happens, what we have been driving forward is bringing the costs down on everything else and then spending the money more effectively so that it becomes an investment for us.
Well, and Wes, we get a lot of questions about that thing. And again, it's misrepresentation. The idea of another level, another layer of government. It's replacing one government with another. It's like saying back in 1776 we voted for another layer of government. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you really believe that, we'd all be speaking the Queen's English today. So again, I look at it as there are certain things that are not being done for Navarre, and here's a way to get it accomplished. You're basically replacing a government that you believe is ineffective with a government that's more answerable to the people. And again, that's no slight to the county commissioners. If you guys don't have any complaints about the current status of Navarre, well, that's fantastic. Turn out Saturday and vote no. Give a resounding no and say, I have full faith in the county commissioners to take care of Navarre. But what that'll do is that'll cut down on the visits to my office, because every constituent I see, they voice a concern with how the county's running things. They're not coming to me with issues that the state is doing wrong. They're coming to me with issues that the county is, in their opinion, not addressing. And it's interesting because someone handed me a note. I want to get this plug out there. Have any of you used the online citizen work request form for the county? They are amazing, and that's great to know. So there is an online citizen work request that you can do for Santa Rosa County. But again, my answer would be that's great. I guess if you have a pothole that needs to be filled, or if someone didn't pick up your trash that day, that's fantastic that they have that. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about things like, how do you get across Highway 98 on Memorial Day? I've taken that walk now for the last 2 years, and it's like taking your life in your hands. The county is not addressing pedestrian overpasses over 98, although I did bring it to their attention today. How do you address the fact that we live in a community of 43,000 people, and I have constituents that come to me and they say, my child can't walk to school even though it's a half mile down the road because there's no sidewalks, and if they walk down the middle of the street, they'll get run over. So again, it's great. Please use that online work request. That's fantastic. But again, we're talking about much bigger issues than spreading pine straw or shaving the median and that kind of stuff. There's another couple questions here that we'll get to, and I know we're getting short on time. Here's an important one, and Bobby, you're our math major. So you did a great job of answering this in the first roundtable. When people talk about property taxes and they talk about the value of their house with a homestead exemption, this lady or gentleman said that their taxes are actually lower than if they built 6 blocks away in what would have been incorporated Gulf Breeze. So they want to know, how can you assure that our property tax won't go up $300 or $500? And again, it's simple math. You take the millage rate, and that's how I came up with my estimated cost, because you're the math major. You said you explained to people how millage rates work. So if you could just explain to them one more time. Let's say Navarre were to have a millage rate of 1.0. It's actually, what, 0.9 or something? Let's just round up to 1. Can you explain to people how that works?
Oh boy. Again, music major, not math. So yeah, my simple math is, for every whole number, that's $100. A whole number is $100. So whatever you bought your house for, that's your just rate, and then you subtract the homestead and any other amendment or appropriation that we're going to be getting that's coming up. And so really, whatever your house is valued at, and if you're homesteaded, you can only go up 3% a year, I believe. So basically, whatever $100,000 you're at, add $100 to it. And to the point of how can you assure it? Well, that's where you're going to have that local government, and if they think about going up, guess what? You're going to hold them accountable, and you're probably going to throw them out. And the other part is, to go down is easy. To go up, there's actually state laws that prohibit us from going too far up. So there's a little bit of state regulation of how high we can go. And there's also going to be your local neighbor's accountability of who's in office and said yes to the dumb bill to begin with. And so that's kind of where the local representation matters most, and we're all going to be in it together, because they're going to be raising their own property values as well if they're voting yes for it, and it better be a dang good reason that we're all in agreement of if that's the case.
And again, that's a question I had for the League of Cities when I spoke to them. So again, these conversations aren't happening in a vacuum. For every comment, for every question that we get, even though I think I know the answer to it, I always check with Tallahassee before I answer you guys. So in an hour-long conversation with the Florida League of Cities on Friday, I asked that question. Hey, people want assurances that the tax rate they think they're getting is the legit tax rate. And the answer was exactly like Bobby said. If they propose anything higher, you vote them out. You don't vote for that candidate.
For the city of Destin, we have a referendum, which means it got on the ballot and the citizens voted on it. Our max is 2. So you guys could have in this charter, or if you guys incorporate, you could guys have another referendum. And so in Destin, while we're at 1.6, we can't go higher than 2 without the citizens' approval. So as a cautionary, I would say almost a complete buck stops the wall here, is you could have it in the charter saying, you know what, if you're at 0.9 right now, 1.4 is as far as we will ever go without bringing this back up. So that's something that's baked into ours, is a 2.0 max.
Interesting, and I know we're short on time. We're probably going to run about 10 minutes over, but people are running questions up here to me. I feel it's only proper that we get to them. This one's above my pay grade. Bernie, I'm looking right at you. So when we talk about the property taxes that are due to the county, that's not going to change. And so Navarre's only option is to put some sort of millage rate in there. The citizens' question is, why can't we deduct the money that goes to Navarre? Why can't we deduct that from what we're paying the county? And it's just not allowed, is it?
No, the county's never going to give that up, unfortunately. But Bobby says that you can do, and we've done too. If you're homesteaded, in other words, this is your home, you're allowed to take off a percentage, or $25,000, $50,000. I'm a disabled veteran. I get extra money for that. Where, nothing against the father here, but if he's just a part-timer that comes in here and doesn't vote and stuff, he doesn't get those discounts. See, if anything, his is going to keep going up. So again, it makes ownership, we take care of us better than anybody. All those outsiders come in here, they're going to pay more. Same way with the businesses. The other one we're having an issue with right now is Airbnbs. And I'm sure you got, now you can tax those at a higher rate. So all that, because they're running a business. So if they're every week you got somebody new next to you, they're going to pay more. As well they should. It's running a business. So yeah, there's ways around this, and it's legal. It's totally legal to do these things. So yeah, you take care of us in this room. All those people who come in here part-time or every other month or every third month or whatever, they should pay more. They're not here all the time.
And I guess I got into the math in government. That's why the only reason I like government at this level is I can get into the math. I'm just going to round numbers. I think it's 73% to that point of those short-term rentals or those businesses. Of course, Destin has a ton of those on the beach. 73% of our ad valorem, so the 73% of that $12 million, I think now this year is going to be $13 million that we collect, are coming from people who don't live here permanently. So those businesses are getting the lion's share of our taxes. The majority of our homesteaders, the majority of the people, whether they've lived here 1 year or let's call it 40, 50 years in Destin, they're at less than 30%. They're less than $400 a year, while the majority of these multi-million-dollar businesses that are on the beach are well paying for the majority of the stuff, and they're not even here to use it.
This might be a good time to point out as well, for those of you that don't follow this thing very closely, when incorporation was initially discussed, at least as far as I'm concerned, about 2-3 years ago, there were certain people who put forward the suggestion that perhaps once Navarre got incorporated and that issue was kind of taken off the table for the county, some people actually proposed the thought that, well, there is a possibility, it's not a probability, but if the county wanted, they could lower property taxes. And the people who mentioned that, they were assaulted in the media. They were called crazy. They were called stupid. Do y'all know that in the election this year, in the Republican primary for county commissioner, we had 2 incumbent commissioners who ran on the platform of lowering property taxes at the county level. So again, things can happen. And just because we put things out there, just because we say, well, hey, maybe this will happen, Some things are possible. They may not be probable, but they are possible. So I just wanted to put that out. That's another myth. That's another example of how, Wes, your group was shouted down and demonized for suggesting that the county lower taxes when you had 2 out of the 5 commissioners this year say, let's lower property taxes. And moving on, there are a couple things I would like to get to, because again, I'm sorry guys for keeping you here late. Here's another thing that I think is interesting. Wes, you've never seen this, I don't think. I don't know if any of you guys have seen this. So I was at a meeting late last week when someone who was obviously against incorporation, to them the big issue was taxes, 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 taxes. They love the county. They used to work for the county. They said, boy, the county can do everything you want and take care of all your needs. If you vote for incorporation, boy, you love taxes. You must really love taxes. You're not a true Republican because taxes are going to go up. We are anti-taxes. That same person 5 minutes later was saying, please vote yes for the local option sales tax. So in other words, the person who's representing the county who said if you become a city, your taxes are going up, in the very same statement, he said, please, please vote yes for your taxes to go up and have the money go to the county. So I just thought that was any comments on that, gentlemen? I mean, if they truly believed in no new taxes, right, they wouldn't be pushing that. I mean, I think it's very brave for those county commissioners to say that because it's the truth, right? Things cost money. If you want infrastructure, if you want to reduce flooding, if you want sidewalks, granted, you can come to me for an appropriation, but the money has to come from somewhere. And I'm not demonizing the local option sales tax. I understand the necessity for it. But for those politicians to then say, if you're for incorporation, you love taxes, well, so are they.
Yeah, our country was founded on limited, focused government. So when we do spend money on taxes, we need to get a real benefit. And we need the mechanism to hold government accountable when there's waste or when there's things that we don't like. And we've talked a lot about the taxes. We've talked about tourism. I've been here for 8 years, and if you've been here for that long or longer, you have seen this community change. And that's really what's at the bottom of it for me, is I have watched Navarre urbanize. I've watched it grow in terms of population density and the people that are here. And people think that incorporation is urbanization. They're not the same thing, because we're experiencing that already. When I first got here, there was a sign that called Navarre, Florida's best kept secret, and it was right out front. Now it's in the back. And that's not just a signatory thing, okay? That is not just, an asterisk to this community. That is a significant change, because what's behind that now is there is enormous amounts of revenue being developed based upon tourists coming here. That money goes to the county, and then they spend it across this country to invite more tourists here. Okay? They're spending it in places like Houston, Texas, and Atlanta, setting up cameras to say, oh, look at Navarre Beach, picture yourself in Navarre. Okay? Which invites more tourists, which invites more money for them to decide where this is going. That, to me, is not how I want my money spent. I don't want to broadcast Navarre all over. We have plenty of tourists. God bless them. I used to be one, right? But we want those tourists to contribute like we do, and then we want our money to be spent on things that we need here locally, like protecting us from flooding, like traffic solutions, like supporting our small businesses. So when you look at taxes and government, the question should be, how is it being used, and is it to my benefit? And if it's not, what can I do about it?
In closing, I've got a few comments here that I printed out from my Facebook page, because as you guys can imagine, when you take a stand on something, and again, I'm just trying to educate, because in the end, it's your vote, it's your voice that we're going to follow. You vote no, we'll quit all this talk. But when people attack and make comments, I think there's a proper forum to answer some of these. Father Kelly, you get to answer this one. Someone said to me on Facebook, hey, your heroes, your patriots, they went to war to not pay taxes. What are you missing? And someone actually did answer, and they said, in actuality, the revolution was fought over being taxed without representation. Do you have any comments you'd like to make on that?
Taxes without representation? Is that the question? I'm from New England. That happened in Boston. So I know my history. A lot of young people don't know history now, but that's very important. I think that's what this is about as well, right? What you just spoke about. That's all I have to say.
Here's another question, and this kind of goes back, Bernie, to what you were talking about a pumping station there in Mary Esther. We have one on the corner of Coral and 98, the busiest intersection in Navarre. People get T-boned at that pumping station every week. I've seen people life-flighted from that location. People have almost died at that. They probably have died at that location. When I walked out to tour the pumping station with High Navarre Water System and with Holly by the Sea, I was told that it was a county decision to put the pumping station there. And when I asked, well, how much will it take to move it half a block where it's not in the way of traffic? About $2 million. So here's a comment. I posted a picture of, again, one of these decisions that was made without our consent. And they said, good grief, that brick wall at Coral and 98, that's been there for years. It was built when the area was first developed. So what's your suggestion to change? How do you move it? Well, I think I just answered it, right? It takes a lot of money to rectify a bad decision in a community. Maybe you could follow up on that.
Right. Again, there's a lot of different grants and options, both at state and federal level and stuff. There's, excuse my French, more than one way to skin a cat, okay? And there's options out there. The Florida Leagues of Cities, again, 400 plus cities in the state of Florida. The average size, by the way, is 4 to 6,000. Not 46,000, 4 to 6,000. That's the average size in the state of Florida. But there's ways around this. Also, again, you got Florida Leagues of Cities in Tallahassee and Orlando, 400. We're going to have a committee already on one of them, and we're looking at different things that affect all of us, okay, i.e. recreational marijuana. So there's ways to fight this as a large group, as 400 of us. And then the 400 of us in the cities go see our state representatives, and we go knock on all their doors. And again, when enough of us walk in there, they start listening to the people. There's strength in numbers. If there's just 4 or 5 of you, good luck. If there's 4,000 or 5,000 of you, much better chance.
There's someone on here who's commented on Facebook, okay, yeah, you incorporate, but at what cost? I don't know of any city that funds itself entirely through grants. Is it worth it to fund a $20 million city to get those grants? Is the annual cost of doing business worth the value of the grants? Would y'all care to, I mean, to you, were the grants worth becoming a city?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm quick enough to pull the calculator out, but to the point of the city of Destin this year is going to pull in $13 million from that ad valorem tax. 73% of that are from people who don't live here and are using our short-term rentals where people could be living there and we could have a little bit more of affordability. But instead, the market said, okay, let's let tourism shine and let's let this happen. So not only is that 13 million a lot, but that is more than the people. That 13 million is coming from a majority of people who don't live here. So I guess at the end of the day, we probably are asking our residents for 2 million, and we have a $70 million budget.
And along those same lines, again, this person's well-intentioned on Facebook, but they're saying these grants, do they have to have matching funds? In other words, is a 0.9 millage going to be enough to qualify for these grants? Would anyone?
Yeah, I mean, so that's the review from the state, right? That's where the expertise needs to come in, the experts that look at this and then say, hey, have you met the requirements? So we as locals can say, we want this and we want that. And then the state can say, okay, here's what you have to do to meet. That's why I wish we could do this with 0.0, but looking at the example set of successful cities, we have to have something to have skin in the game, but let's make that the lowest possible cost on residents so that we can maximize the value, which is what Bobby and Destin are doing, right?
And real quick, I mentioned this earlier, but I think it's worth going back to the issue of Navarre Beach, because in my opinion, the people who are dead set against incorporation, they're using Navarre Beach as a pawn. They're talking to people on the beach saying, what do you need the mainland for? You know, you 15 people out here on the island, you can become your own city and cut them entirely out of the equation. Jim, can you speak to that? I mean, in my opinion, it benefits Navarre Beach to be associated with what's happening on the mainland. I mean, that's just my perspective from the Florida House, because again, when you look at the facts, there's been no movement whatsoever on incorporation anywhere in the state. There's been no new incorporated cities or towns since 2017, ladies and gentlemen. So Jim, do you honestly think the state is going to break precedent? Would they be more likely to break precedent for a community of 50,000 people, or would they be more likely to break precedent for a community of 300?
I'm not the numbers guy, but that's a pretty easy question to answer. Navarre Beach, there's a movement to incorporate Navarre Beach. They see what you all are going through. I personally don't see any way in the world that could happen on Navarre Beach. The numbers are too small. The millage rate would increase too much. And one thing to add to that as well, I don't think it's a secret to anyone in this room that the commissioners do not want us to become incorporated. They want the majority of that money to go back up to the county and not stay with us. Can you imagine what we would look like if that money stayed with us, or more of it? In addition to that, if it weren't for the TDC, Navarre Beach would not look like it does right now. They have been a huge part. I'm a part of the BBC, Beach Beautification Committee. We partnered with them back in 2006, have worked with them since then. They've been fantastic to work with. The county has not put all those palm trees out there. They did not do the entrance to Navarre Beach. They didn't put the little tiki umbrellas and the benches and all the stuff that's out there. We as a group got that done working with the TDC. So don't say, wow, the county's doing a great job on Navarre Beach. They're not.
Well, thank you for what your group has done on Navarre Beach. That's amazing. I just learned something this evening. So that's amazing what your individual group has accomplished out there on the beach side. I mean, that's an organization I'd want to be a part of.
Just to add to that, back in about 2006, when we started this organization, we invited Bob Cole, one of our county commissioners, then to come to a meeting. Bob Cole was a great advocate of us. We, at that time, had collected about $70,000. Since then, we totaled more than $120,000 from our citizens on the beach in the form of donations. At that point in time, we proposed to Bob Cole, Bob, if we come to you with $60,000 or $70,000, would the county work with us? Would you match us? He said, we'd be hard-pressed, his exact words, be hard-pressed not to, because most people come to us with empty hands and want money. He said, you guys are bringing money forth. Yes, we will, and yes, they did. So that's the way the beach worked.
Well, again, thank you for everything you do out there. I've got several patients that live on the beach side, and they're involved in that group, and just really remarkable people. Before I get to the last question and statement, there's a gentleman in the audience that gave me a humongous thumbs up when I started talking about incorporating 50,000 versus 50. Sir, can you identify yourself? And maybe it looked like you had a comment. I'm going to break protocol here and let you make a statement.
Sure. My name is Steve Brentro, and I'm from, I'll get in front of the camera. There we go. I'm from Perdido area, and I am the West Siler of the organization out there that was investigating municipal incorporation. And I got to tell you, I thought, oh, hey, there's a process to this. It's laid out in state statutes. This will be easy. I was wrong. It's one of the hardest things you can do. And I fought from the beginning, and we're still going through this process, but we are very much like you guys. We have the key, Perdido key, and then we've got a body of water and a bridge, and then we've got the mainland. And we've got different priorities. The people on the key say one thing and think the mainlanders are going to take everything from them, and the mainlanders are like, well, they just want us for whatever. But at the end of the day, the only way forward, I realized, is together. Because you can't have a healthy community. You can't even dream of having a healthy city unless you can first prove that you have a healthy community together, right? And it all comes down to, like, there's a lot of talk of the how is this going to work, and the what is this, what is that, and all these questions. And this is very reminiscent of our first meeting. Imagine 500 people coming in here, slamming down the questions, and then we have to answer them. That was our first experience. But what it comes down to is why. Why do you want to do it? And the why is simple. And the why on the mainland and the why on Perdido Key was the exact same. is because we're not getting the services we wanted. We don't have any representation. We want to make our own decisions. We're tired of living in our mom's basement, right? And we just, we know we're making a lot of money, but we're tired of living in our mom's basement and having all that money go out the door. And we want to take responsibility and grow up. And it gets pretty easy at that point. And then, so I would encourage, I'm very blessed to hear your statements about the beach, and I hope that your organizations come together and do this together. That's my.
I see now why we got the big thumbs up. So it sounds like you would agree that to my statement earlier, you either hang together or you hang separately. There is no Navarre Beach without the Navarre mainland. You could possibly have a Navarre mainland, a city of Navarre without the beach, but I don't think it would be as successful. So thank you for your insight and that comment. And how many people are we talking about in your case? 25,000. So 25,000. So if it's difficult for 25,000, or if it's not possible for 25,000, it certainly, in my opinion, Jim, wouldn't be possible for the 400 or 500 they claim to have on the beach side. Yeah.
We have about 2,000.
2,000.
Residents.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money to take on for.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So thank you for that comment. I've got one final question, and I think I'll take this unless someone wants to wave and ask for the microphone. It said the vote would simply be to get an idea of how the majority of residents feel about incorporation. However, only a small percentage of those who will vote no to incorporate are even aware of an October 12th. So I actually misread it when I first was handed this. I thought it said only a small percentage of Navarre residents. I think the question is the people who hate incorporation don't know there's a vote. Does that matter to me? Does that make the vote illegitimate? So we have news agencies that are here today. We have Channel 5, we have Fox 10, we have the Navarre Press, we have Northwest Florida Conservatives, who's over here filming the whole thing. The leading voice, I guess, the leading blogger in the area who is hell-bent against incorporation, that person had access to my office. That person had access to our proposals, to what we were talking about. That person was aware of when the straw vote would be. This is a plan, ladies and gentlemen. This is a strategy. The people you look to on the anti-side, it was an organized strategy to discredit this move. They said, you know what, we'll boycott the vote. There's not going to be a vote. We'll boycott it. So you would not believe the number of phone calls I've been getting in the last 48 hours of people who say, hey, our leadership over here on this side, they told us to get out and vote, and we don't know where to vote. Well, again, you had a tabloid journalist on your payroll. I don't know why every week she wasn't telling anti-people, here's the vote, here's the day, be sure and turn out. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's how America works. I mean, I don't know the political affiliation of all the people here today. I'm a diehard Republican. And the one thing that ticks me off more than anything is being accused of being a Democrat because I want to hear the people vote. So can you imagine when people now come to me, people who wouldn't even sit down and talk to me in my office, people who wanted to act like there is no one wanting incorporation of Navarre, he's crazy. Can you imagine that when they start crying like the Democrats normally do on election day, when they say, can you leave the polls open another 4 hours because we haven't bussed in all of our voters yet? Can you imagine? I have no sympathy for those people, right? You call me a Democrat, but yet you're the one using Democrat tactics. You're trying to stack the vote now that you realize you don't have the numbers. So, ladies and gentlemen, my answer to you is very simple. I've been all over the media for the last 3 months. I've taken a lot of arrows for having this position. And like Father Kelly said, it's not a position to incorporate. It's a position to hear the voice of the people. I asked the members of the anti-movement to go with me to the county commissioners meeting. I said, you guys should be screaming your lungs out to have this on the county ballot in November. Instead, they were the people that got it shot down. So for them to complain about the day of the vote or where the vote's going to take place or where the polling stations are, these are the very people that did not want a vote. Period. So to now act like their vote is sacred. Another point I want to make is that in the Republican primary we just had, where we had very important decisions made on behalf of the county, we threw out 2 county commissioners and brought in 2 new ones. Do you know the turnout for that primary? 25%. 25% of eligible voters decided who our county commissioners are going to be. So do I care what the turnout is for the straw vote? No, because you were told the day, the time, you were told the polling stations, all you had to do was ask where it is. So again, if you have neighbors that are complaining, you're playing Monopoly and now someone's complaining about the rules that are written on the board. Well, guys, we all play under the same rules. Can you imagine that same tabloid journalist? Can you imagine if today I said, no, wait, I changed my mind, the vote's Tuesday? They would accuse me of stacking the deck. They would accuse me, oh, he must not have the votes. He's wanting more days to get more yes votes. So unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, those are the rules. We can't change the rules. I even had someone text me today, a close friend, who said, with a hurricane going on, it's not right to have the vote on Saturday. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I can't help that. Back in 2004, when George W. Bush ran for president against John Kerry, I stood in the driving rain in Charlotte, North Carolina for 3 hours to vote for George W. Bush. I did not want a President John Kerry. I got septic as a result of standing in that rain. I drove to Cincinnati that evening and had to go to the hospital because I was very ill from standing in the rain for my right to vote. So when you talk about your right to vote, it's also your right to know, it's your responsibility rather to know, where do I go? What day is it? What's the process for getting absentee ballots? So yeah, you had the same rules I had. My vote's been cast. So ladies and gentlemen, do y'all have any comments you'd like to make in closing? I think you guys did a great job. Can we get a round of applause for our... I think, Wes, after saying that the rules are the rules and look, this is how it has to be. I'm not the one who makes the rules, ladies and gentlemen. This was done by a reputable company, Honest Ballot, who's busting their tail, frankly. In regards to the hurricane, can you imagine? They're flying through a hurricane to make this vote happen. So again, I don't think there's anybody in the room that has the power to tell them to turn around. But Wes, can you maybe educate the people one last time on the process to vote, the polling stations, and how this is going to take place?
Yeah, so they're flying in tomorrow to do this. I would have loved it to be the county. It would have saved us $17,000. But the company that we hired, we looked at 3 different companies. We chose this one because they provided the best services and had done this, and they were willing to do it in person, which we think is very important. So if you voted absentee, you can call them and make sure that they counted your ballot. But we encourage people to vote in person this Saturday, 8 to 5 p.m. You can show up. They're going to have staff at 3 locations. So Andy D's on the beach is one. Right next to TC's front porch at 8510 Navarre Parkway West is the second one. And then the third one is right here. So if you made it out tonight, come back here on Saturday and have your vote cast. Right now what we're looking at is 6:30 that evening, Saturday evening, they will announce the results of that vote. And I just wanted to close with something that Steve said, which I think is just so important, is he talked about the community coming together and being healthy. And Doc, that's what I look forward to, is because if this is a no, then we're going to abide by what the people want. All right? If it's a yes, then we're going to go forward. And you know what? I'm going to sleep good either way, right? Because then I'm going to know this is where the people stand on this issue. And we as a community will abide by that. And I really hope that brings down some of the negativity that you mentioned and some of the toxic, like name calling that we've seen in this issue. And I am so proud of our group of Chuck and Nancy and Jersey and Mike and all these folks who've withstood all that for years now. And I'm looking forward to what happens on Saturday as the culmination of so much work to get to what? To get to you, to get to the people, to give you the right to vote that the county wouldn't give you. And that is worth every ounce of effort that we have put into this. So thank y'all so much.
So I think that concludes our program. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for turning out. Hopefully that answered some questions for you guys. And again, regardless of how you vote, it's very important that you vote Saturday, because what you say is what I'm going to abide by. You don't like it, you vote no. This issue is dead for the rest of my tenure, and Wes knows that. You vote yes, we don't incorporate that evening, we don't even incorporate that year. It's a long and arduous process. You're simply giving me the green light to proceed with state abilities. So thank you very much for coming out.